I've just got to tell you a story about how my eyes were opened to how far God has personally carried me and how He's carried our church here at Northside Christian Church. On August 10th of 2014, we launched 3 services at 9, 10:15, and 11:30. And we did this because of space limitations, both with our adults in our services, but also with our junior and senior high teens in their teen service. And the uncertainties were, how are we going to take junior and senior high teens who were all accustomed to being in one service with all of that energy and excitement and putting them into 2 services at 9 and 11:30. And then how are we going to be able to take our adults into 3 services with all of that programming and have healthy, vibrant services in all 3 so that people are inviting their friends and there's a great environment for worship. Well, on Sunday, August 10th, it was 10:15 and our youth minister, Kevin Punch, and I were in the hallway and I asked him, I said, how'd 9 o'clock crave go? And he said, we had 96. And he and I both just looked at each other bug-eyed because he had been averaging under 90 during the month of July. And we thought, who's going to come at 11:30? And then we looked into the worship center at 10:15 and they were pulling the curtains back and people were flooding in. And he and I both were just having that sense of, I hope people come at 11:30. Well, people did come. In the Crave service, he had 52 that came at 11:30. That meant they had 148 in their teen service that day. And there were over 200 in the 11:30 service for the adults. And when it was all said and done, we had 1,234 people here on that first Sunday, and it's continued to grow, and we've been thrilled with what we've seen. It was just a testimony. Look what God did. We couldn't manufacture this. Our surveys didn't reveal this. This is what God did because He wanted to see His kingdom grow. Well, here's where my story really comes into play. It was the next morning, Monday morning, and I brought my son Owen to work with me because my wife had orientation at work, and we went down to the library and I was just looking for a book that he could read. And I was randomly pulling books out, and I pulled this one out and there was a bulletin in the book. And I pulled out the bulletin and I looked at the cover and realized this is from quite a ways back, and I flipped it over and it said, for the record, August 10th, 2008. And I opened it up and looked at the sermon page, and the sermon page was from a series called Passing of the Baton. And Ed Holt, our former senior minister of 26 years, was preaching that sermon. It was called Transition at Hand. He was preaching the sermons to pass the preaching baton to me as I began my lead ministry here at Northside. And I was also holding our bulletin from that Sunday, which was entitled I Love My Church. And I then took the 2 bulletins and compared them side by side. And here I had a bulletin from August 10th, 6 years earlier, that said we had 724 people, and here we had 1,234 people. And we had $16,000 in offering in 2008. And in 2014, it was over 31,000. And I just stood there looking at these bulletins. And I just had this real sense that God was just affirming in my spirit, look how far I've carried you. Look how far I've brought you. Look how I have guided your steps. Look how I am faithful, a faithful provider. And I just had this sense, not only has God provided for me in this way, but God has provided for our church in this way. He has directed our steps. Look how far God has carried us. Look how He's brought us through. And then I began to get excited thinking about, if God has done this in 6 years, what does God have in store for the next 6 years? I began to be filled with this excitement of where God is going to take us next. He is a faithful God. He provides for us. And I just walked away with this sense, if God is for us, who can be against us? Thank you, God, for the way you carry us. Thank you for providing for us. If God is for us, who can be against us? That's my story.